Well. Welcome back, acolytes, apprentices, to the Arcane Archive. Indeed, if you weren't aware by my most amazing introduction, today we have for you a most evil, a most egregious, a most absolutely despicable day of stories for you here. That's right, we're back again with another Cautionary Chronicles, the likes of which perhaps you have never seen before. I mean, technically, literally, you haven't seen it before because this is obviously a brand new video that we're, posting here. You haven't seen this one specifically, but even compared to other ones, this might kind of be more deliberately or specifically themed to be a more, kind of disquieting, evil, fucked up kind of thing. I mean, what do you think, Sammy? Like, don't take it just from me.
No, I mean there's a definite theme here, and it's at least from what I can tell, uh, a lot of these stories have an evil player afoot. Quite possibly a co-conspiring evil DM afoot as well.
Yes, indeedy, deedy, deedy. This, take it from us, ladies and gentlemen, and all those between and beyond. The whole vibe of today's video is definitely going to be around many, seemingly, cool, chill, nice individuals who somehow reveal, or at some point reveal, their true malicious malintent, their malice, as it were. Um, It'll be fun and interesting, I'm sure. Obviously, as we do this for science, and we like to have a more philosophical or psychological approach to being able to dissect some of the potential, thoughts, ideas, motivations, objectives, and thought processes of all these incredibly unique and fascinating subjects. But we could go ahead and prattle and wax poetic on all day long, and we will. But first, before we continue that, as always, a little bit of housekeeping. If you like what we're doing here on the channel, as always, we appreciate all the support, any and all support that you could offer. Hit that like button, go ahead and comment down below any thoughts, ideas, or critiques or shit talks you just want to say. Either way, we'll take what we can get. We appreciate any discord and discourse that we could possibly have. It helps us all grow, as long as it's constructive, of course. Overall. Obviously too, subscribe and share the channel. Any support or help in that way is always immensely appreciated. But with that, let's go ahead. No longer waiting. Let's dive right on into this thing today. The first story we have for you all, my friends, is titled, "You're Attacking My Religion!" The story of a Christian player who took things too far, by She Who Dances. Now, just as a heads up, there is a bigotry warning here, at least a warning tag. So for any people who might be slightly or a bit, sensitive to that, just you are forewarned. So, before we get into things, while this player is a religious person, I know for a fact that all religious people are not like this. Anyway, I've been playing TTRPGs on and off for the past few years, but found myself dry after leaving a long-time group of friends. So I went to the most reputable places possible to find a game. Requests for online TTRPGs in nerd shops. One Discord invite later, I was in the server, meeting the cast. The GM of our party, actually an absolutely excellent person with, to be fair, a few maybe fatal flaws that made this story horrific. Fundy, the problem player in question, a very religious person who enjoyed passionate sermons. A few other players were also present, however, they didn't really contribute to the story in any major way. So, we get to character creation, and I decide to pull out my usual character. A paladin who broke her oath because she was tired of being strict and holy. She was constantly, a bit jaded, foul-mouthed, and tended to sit at a 45-degree angle in her seat. And that's just being generous. Fundy played a cleric of the... how do I say that? Fuck it. I'm going to call it God, because it was definitely meant to be that. He had Christian tenets, he often spoke Bible verses, so on and so forth. It was clearly just an insert. Session 0 went pretty well, and afterwards, Fundy messaged me. He wanted our characters to have a backstory together. Basically, he wanted the church I left to be his, and he was trying to lead me back to the Lord. I agreed because, I thought it'd be fun RP stuff, and I had no real intention to have my character return to God anyway. Obviously, come to find out, agreeing was a bad idea. Now, most downtime was spent with Fundy trying to convince my character to abandon her sinful ways and return to his loving embrace. Now, my character, being a bit of an abrasive prick, would tell him to shove off. Or, if he's so loving, why is the world so effed up? And every time that I did this, I heard an exasperated breath come from his microphone. Eventually, another player messaged me. She liked how our characters interacted and wondered if they could begin an in-game relationship. I agreed, and this went pretty well, honestly. Her character started to really draw mine out of her edgy, brooding shell, and the two of them shared some pretty adorable moments. Fundy, however, did not like this. His character's long tirades now mentioned her as well. He'd say things like, "You don't want to drag her down the same path that you're going down," and "women should not lie with one another. You need a man of the cloth, not another woman." My character would try to intimidate him to just fuck off with that. After the session, I messaged the GM to say that Fundy's rhetoric was making me incredibly uncomfortable. And the GM responded that Fundy wasn't actually like that IRL, he was just playing his character. Eventually, Fundy started to post some art of our characters. Here we go. AI generated art at that. My character was depicted as a blonde girl with pale skin and gorgeous plate armor. Now, dear readers, my paladin was black to start, also with dark brown hair and with studded leather armor. When I brought this up to him, he said, "Oh, well, this is what I imagined her to look like, but whatever you say." I was a bit perturbed at this, to say the least, and messaged the GM once again. He responded with something along the lines of, "Well, I can't change what already exists, but I guess I'll talk to Fundy." Quite frankly, to this day, I still don't know if he actually did. Eventually, as you can imagine, things broke down. The PC my character was attached to died, and my character retreated back into her shell. She took it badly, becoming moody and confrontational, even more than normal. And Fundy saw this as the perfect time to start preaching to her again, talking about how this was a prime time to repent for my sins and return to my father so that she may be honored in heaven. My character said, "Go away, or my next sin will be cutting you down." Now, dear readers, originally this was just intended to be an empty threat, as I had done these sorts of things to other PCs before and never truly followed up. Hell, even having at times my character apologize for being a total tool later. Fundy, however, didn't take it like that at all. He decided to challenge my character to a duel, saying that if he won, she'd have to return to the Order. Now, given that this was basically kind of a bad cleric versus an absolutely optimized to hell and back paladin, you can imagine that I 100% absolutely whipped his ass up and down the floor. My character, after giving him such a thorough trouncing, healed him, and I decided to be, maybe a bit of an ass, as is kind of my thing, saying, maybe if you spent more time learning to fight, you'd actually be able to convince me. Fundy immediately flipped out, screaming about how I was a cheater, a sinner, a racism comment here, a sexism comment there, a homophobia comment one last time for good measure, and how I should just get some Christian husband to take pity on me. He ended his initial screaming rampage with a, "And you're attacking my religion!" The GM, to his credit, kept trying to calm him down, but he just continued to scream and scream. Eventually, I just left the call entirely. And the GM sent me a message later apologizing and saying how he never saw something like this coming at all. I told him that he was an idiot for not seeing it coming, and I was giving him an ultimatum. Either he kicks Fundy or I will leave. The GM agreed that he had made some mistakes and he kicked out Fundy, saying his character died in our duel. Fundy, in turn, sent me a few private messages later, continuing his berating and use of slurs and insults, demanding I stop being into women and come to God, or I'd be unloved and burn in hell. I called him a bitch and blocked him in post.
Oh.
Well, what do you think of this one right off the bat, buddy boy?
Well, personally, I'm all for how OP reacted to this individual.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
spent the majority of my time in high school berating outwardly shove it down your throat religious people because they would try to convince others to feel the same way as them. So I would meticulously pick them apart piece by piece until they cried and
Mm-hmm.
left us alone. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something I still to this day enjoy doing. Um, so yeah, I'm a big supporter of this kind of reaction. Look,
Hmm.
you can believe whatever you want, you can feel however you want to feel. That is your right as a human on this earth. It means I can disagree with you, it means you can disagree with me, but you can't make me feel the same way you're going to feel. It's the whole point of like free speech, at least in this country.
I mean, at least
It doesn't
usually
feel that
is.
way most of
Yeah,
the time, but
that's the theory anyway. That's the intention.
there's the
Um,
idealistic way that it's supposed to work.
Indeed.
And god damn it if I'm not at least idealistic about that.
Hey, you
Um
gotta have something. You gotta have hope in something, my friend.
but
Everybody's
no,
gotta
no,
believe
there's
in
no
something.
Adam, there's no hope. It's just ideals.
Oh, I know, Sammy. I
Um
know.
but
Uh,
yeah, I don't think like if anyone at the table, DM included, said you were behaving wrong in some way, no. I don't I please don't think that you were in the wrong in any sense of the world.
no, I
Um,
would agree. I would say OP, you are definitely not, the asshole here, which I don't think you at any point ever thought that you were. Which is good because yeah, this guy, like, I mean, again, fair with fair. You were the asshole in terms of like, your character is clearly an asshole, but it seems to me at least from how you're depicting it that you were very open about that and at least I hope that you were and you were very communicative with the rest of the your fellow players and GM about how, like you are planning to make your character better, and they seem to get a bit better when that other player's character and yours were connecting. And obviously, like with the way that this person was going, it's always a very slippery slope to have like a super religious person to being just so doggedly whatever. Like there's a difference between being religious in terms of you are spiritually aware, conscious, and dedicated, and that's great. Like Sammy said, there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's an entirely different thing, however, to, like he said as well, start trying to cram it and shove it down everybody else's throats, or even to judge, demonize, and vilify other people for not believing or having the same extent and intensity of beliefs that you do. You trying to enforce that upon them against their will is always a problem. Doesn't matter what it is. It's still akin to assault in a lot of ways. Like this person literally tried to force her into coming back to his religion or to his god or their temple or whatever, and literally did so by trying to beat it into her essentially. And then he lost and then threw a fit, the likes of which that technically speaking any truly loving deity and entity would, or at least that is good aligned, would most likely be exceedingly embarrassed and disgusted by. um it is highly unfortunate that he allowed a lot of his outside shit to get into the game as well. Like that is, no matter what, it's never a great look. No matter what it is, the game is the game, and you really shouldn't let outside stuff kind of start to corrupt or toxify that. Because a lot of the time, not all the time, again, exceptions to every rule, but most of the time, shit happening outside has nothing to do with what's going on in the game and should be left as such. The game is supposed to be strictly more fantasy, overall fiction, I should say. Obviously, like we say here at the Arcane Archive, the best TTRPG games are ones that are able to bridge that gap between fantasy and reality, take elements of both within reason and with what makes sense and apply them together to really immerse, to maximize immersion and therefore fun and interest. But personal things that are happening in your life should not be involved here. That's why
Not to that degree.
yeah, I always feel that it's a huge red flag when a person wants to insert anything directly into the game like that in terms of like, I don't care if it's, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, whatever, like, they want to specifically insert that the direct thing. Same thing if they want to use like a character in pop culture or fiction, we're just like, yeah, I'm Superman now. I'm playing as Superman, or I'm playing as Monkey D. Luffy from One Piece, or I'm playing it like anything like that is of the utmost dire cringe. I mean, that shit is just, oh my God, that is unmitigated cringe right there to me, no matter what it is. I don't care what topic it is. It's just ridiculous. Especially in a land of like, multiple gods, multiple magics and abilities and wondrous things. It's just like having certain thought processes, beliefs, or whatever in from our world and here, it just doesn't really make sense. It doesn't really apply like in a reasonable, rational nature. Like again, it's like I think we read that one story about that atheist player who was like, my character is atheist, and it's like, well, I I don't really know how you could really do that logically speaking because the gods are very much like undeniably real. Like if they're not abstract, they don't take like a back seat. Like they are very much present and interactive with
Yeah,
the
you want to be an
world.
atheist? Go play a Dark Sun campaign.
Yeah, like that makes far more sense. But it's like that having that kind of concept here doesn't make as much sense. Um, but yeah, like it's unfortunate when an individual has to be that just kind of toxic about something that should be used as a means of enlightenment, elevation, of trying to spread more positivity, light, and goodness. Instead, they use it in a really negative and shitty kind of fucking way. Um,
Yeah.
and it's really unfortunate. But otherwise, unless you have anything else to say about this one, Sammy, we can go ahead and move on to the next one.
Sure.
Go ahead and take it
I
away, bud.
have our next one by either it's Trudhen or Truthen. The idea of my character died. If only the character died too. Edit. I really should have said that the DM of this story has not DM'd a campaign of this scale before. Also, the campaign is built in such a way where we rotate DMing every 3 to 4 sessions while keeping the same characters. This is a four. This is the fourth episode of the campaign, meaning 3 of us have already DM'd for these characters, and the characters are meant to continue in many more mini campaigns to come. The reason why I stayed in the campaign is simply because I have fun playing alongside the DM of this story when he is a player, and I did not intend on burning all the bridges because of one frustrating experience, and I also did not want to discourage the DM completely as he is very new to DMing, and I know for a fact he worked long and hard on this campaign. Before we begin, I would like to say that all the people involved are my dear friends, and I do not wish for any hate towards the people involved. Well, here it goes. The campaign was a 3-shot by a good friend of mine, and besides me, a life domain cleric who is a female elf, there were 3 more of my friends whose classes and races are irrelevant to the story. In the first session, we arrived on an island and quickly figured out that we were in a, quote, dread domain of some sort that was ruled over by an evil king that once conquered the land for reasons yet known to us. Shortly after our arrival, we were ambushed by a group of wraiths, and me being a cleric surrounded by undead creatures, I went with the good old combo of spirit guardians plus turn undead on later turns. My moment of glory did not last long, however, because on the second round, I was an unfortunate victim of a later admitted not so random crit for far too much damage for me to be able to pass my concentration saving throw. The fight went on. I healed myself up from critical damage for me to be able to pass my con. Oh, sorry. Healed myself up from critical health and did the only logical thing, cast Turn Undead. To my surprise, the vast majority of the mobs failed their save and were thus forced to run away from me. However,
Hey, I always love
yeah,
that. That always feels great.
this however created a problem as the DM had cooked up a story where this was not supposed to happen.
Yeah.
The wraiths at this point were very far away and quickly replaced by another pack of wraiths that in just one turn were all instantly killed by a shaman NPC appearing out of nowhere and
Oh,
thus saving us.
okay. You could have just let the cleric save themselves and have the shaman show up to like, you know,
Heal them?
heal them or direct them someplace safer. Like, he made the wraiths leave, so you're just like, oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, my shaman's like over here while they're distracted. Like, you really have to have the shaman be the one to destroy the threat too. Like, all
Yeah.
right.
The adventure went on. We arrived in the village. We were given several quests in order to find out more about the Dread Lord King and away into his castle where we had to defeat him in order to escape the Dread Domain. Next encounter had us fighting a boss whose abilities were heavily based around charming the players. And so I did the only logical thing, cast Calm Emotion on us, and thus granting us immunity to the status effect. However, this was not supposed to happen. The DM, now at a loss on how to make the boss challenging, got mad at me ruining his fight for the second time. The next session I was feeling a little guilty, and so I stuck to only healing spells and damaging cantrips. Oh my god. The DM would also tell me to save my spells for Remove Curse, as the spell was apparently needed for the next part of the story. The fights that session were brutal, especially one fight against the King's Son in an arena where essentially every attack would block healing effects on the victim until the next turn, and also, this time, not a single turn undead would go through. The fight ended with all of us alive, in no small part thanks to the DM heavily and openly fudging rolls. How do you openly fudge rolls? The campaign went on
I mean, pretty
with
easy if you're
several.
just a dickhead GM. You just roll it and you're like, that's a 72, even though you rolled like a 5. And you're like,
Well, but they was doing it in their favor, which is a bit unfortunate.
hmm.
This campaign on went on with several more fights, and at this point I was promoted to the party heal bot. We fought some baddies, did some puzzles where I dared to cast divination, which resulted in the spell being banned. Anyway, back to being a
Jesus
heal bot.
Christ.
And we also had to make friends with a tribe of, quote, friendly ghouls, because that was how the story was supposed to go. Never mind me being a cleric of Kelemvor, because I was very clearly told that I had to leave the ghouls alive for the story.
God.
I kept my frustration mostly to myself, only asking the DM for no more anti-heal mechanics since that was kind of all I had left at this point. But I was growing bored and sick of what my character had become. So eventually, we stormed the king's castle, fighting side by side with our ghoul allies and finally meeting the king, where we were told that the king had conquered the island for a magical stream of water that would save his dying wife. The description of the long dead queen was strangely familiar to how I described my own character, and thus my backstory went completely out the window. The king proclaimed me as a reincarnation of his dead wife, and I got a quick confirmation of this from Kellenvor because I was trying to convince the king that I in fact was not, and that would go against the story. King angered The king was angered that I would kill our son in the arena, but still begged me to join him yet again in his life. We killed the king, however, me being so frustrated, simply browsed my phone for the vast majority of the fight, hoping that my character would die here, since for me the idea of my character was already gone. However, the DM got upset at me a couple times for not paying attention to the events of the story crafted for my character's development.
Specifically for their
In
character's development.
the end, I grew disgusted with my character and felt like I was simply the DM's NPC to cast spells only when he needed me to, and to serve as an important part of the DM's big reveal about the king's backstory. I never got to feel like a hero in the whole campaign, and between being reduced to the party's heal bot and the unwanted addition to my backstory, all this simply killed my idea of the character.
Hmm.
So this is something that I will say. I want to give if you know that you're going to be playing this round robin style of DMing with people that don't necessarily DM, Why would you bring a character you're so attached to? Now, I understand maybe they didn't start that way and you grew attached to them. But you guys don't have ground rules on like what you can touch in a character's backstory. You don't have There was no discussion to be had outside the table because it sounds like there were 3 sessions worth of discussions that should have been had before it continued. And it doesn't sound like you talked to the person like that's the only thing I'm gonna say. I completely sympathize with your feelings. This DM did a terrible job. They're inexperienced. They railroaded the fuck out of the entire group of sessions. But that's inexperience. That's how it goes. Every DM at one point does this. Whether it's their first time DMing, whether it's their first time using a book module, whether it's their first time trying to homebrew something, whatever it is, every DM, no matter how experienced, started here, thinking that everything had to go a certain way and everything had to go the way that they thought it was going to go because it's a fun story that everyone's going to enjoy. This was
Yeah.
not done well, not because the person is an asshole or doesn't care necessarily. As you said, they're a good friend of yours that you wanted
Well,
to keep playing with. It sounds like
yeah.
DMing is not their strong suit. Did you should have talked to them after the first session. There's nothing in here that says you didn't or you did. So I'm gonna say hopefully you did. If you did and this continued, then you have a real problem you have to talk with them about outside of the table. This is obviously not something that you can solve while playing the game.
No.
Because like your character, this can be retconned super easily. You don't have to lose this character. It sounds like you've already given up, which sucks.
That's what I was gonna say. Like it seems like more so like OP themselves kind of just like threw their own shit to the side overall before anything else. I get like what Sammy just said. I don't know if you have actually talked at all about it, like what steps you took to keep this from happening, or if you kind of just it seems more like you were just like, yeah, I can't play the way that I want my character to play or I want to play my character because I feel bad about doing it. Or, and then eventually he made it like you couldn't, I guess. Because like initially it was like, hey, you circumvented a number of the encounters just by doing a thing that your class can do naturally. Like I literally also apparently did that in the session I played yesterday as well. Which is it's a fun, interesting little moment when you can maybe kind of do that at times unexpectedly. Um, but it is obviously also up to the GM, which initially though, like you said that you felt bad, so all you were doing at that point was just casting cantrips and healing spells. Like, well, why? Like I get it, like you're feeling bad, but it's like that's technically part of the game in terms of hey, your character should be able to do those things at times. Maybe not every time. The GM kind of should account for that because they should know, what characters are in their party and what's going to happen. If this is a primarily, undead themed campaign, a paladin and a cleric, and certain, warlocks and other magic classes are gonna be pretty effective against them. That is the point. They're supposed to be. It's part of the game. So yeah, I think the biggest thing both me and Sam are kind of like, wondering about is what did you do to stop or fix or address the issues you were having? Did you communicate at all? You kind of just seem to yourself decide that, oh, well, I can't do this and I don't want to do this. And then you just seem to dig and bury yourself even deeper down into that hole of just like, yeah, my character's lost because I can't play them the way that I want them to, and he's set up all this stuff for my character, and it's like, okay, I mean, you don't have to just take that, you don't have to just accept that. I mean, that's you can talk, like Sam said, you can retcon pretty easily. Like, I don't know why you feel disgusted with what your character grew into when it's like, but you're the one who really decides what your character grows into ultimately. Like like you said you were promoted to the party heal bot, but why? Like, did you not want to use offensive spells? Like how does that happen without your, well, yeah, like I assume, are you insinuating that like your GM basically banned spells that you could use or abilities that you could use, like he did with apparently divination? Like, is that again? There's a lack of context, maybe that we're having here. We're missing certain context or other aspects to be able to truly understand what happened overall. I don't know. What do you think, Sam? Like,
No, I mean, you're not wrong. Um, but like, I also the first, we don't know what happens at a table. We only know what is written down. And what I will say is like, there's the definite possibility that like they tried to push back on things and were told no at the table and just didn't really know how to go from there. I've had things in my backstory changed or people taken out of my backstory, whether they died off screen or something. That can be a very frustrating thing.
yeah.
Um, but there is a bridge to cross and things to mend or figure out before you just go, it's over. Um, but giving up is also on you. But at the same time, I do very much understand it, so I'm not gonna like
Yeah, I get the frustration
condemn
too.
it.
Same. Like, it's just yeah, I don't know. Like, cause like one thing, obviously, the top comment down here is like, this was very railroady. Your GM is also grossly unskilled at creating entertaining or balanced combat, and your main mistake was sticking with a bad campaign for a bad GM. It was a losing proposition. One of the response comments says, I agree, though I think it's worth remembering that OP begins by saying it is a three shot and not a full campaign. I think extremely short sessions like that are pretty much always going to be very railroady just by nature. And I can understand why OP didn't bail given that they're close friends and it was a very small time commitment. The GM definitely had a lot of issues though, and I'm not at all sure why they'd want to turn Curse of Strahd into a three shot, since it seems clear that this was what the GM was doing. Maybe this was their first time playing and they wanted something without much commitment, but yeah, the GM needs to ditch the idea of that their fun comes from beating players in encounters, and they need to not rely on gimmicks to railroad when those gimmicks can be totally circumvented by spells the player has access to. And if you're going to keep just one aspect of Strahd's personality, maybe don't make it the creepy obsession with a woman part. I
But why
mean,
not? That's really great. It's like
yeah,
a
no,
super great
I don't.
quality.
I mean, here's the thing, and if you're talking about like a villain, yeah, I think that quality does actually work really well because it's a pretty oldest time, especially if we're talking about that's like a vampire's whole goddamn thing, literally, is them being obsessed with like one mortal individual who like makes them feel alive again or whatever the fuck, and like they just become like that's kind of part of the whole immortality thing, I guess. But either way, like I do agree, I do appreciate that comment saying like I don't think railroadiness is and again, hot take here, for everybody. I personally don't believe that railroading is just, end all be all bad all the time. I don't believe it's just automatically synonymously bad. You know what I mean? You can railroad, and I think certain railroads are good if they actually serve a purpose. If they are keeping, progress and movement, because as we all know, if anybody has ever played, seen, heard, watched, or anything of a TTRPG game, let me tell you, it is exceedingly easy for people to kind of go off on a tangent, to completely lose track of what they're doing and go on a completely separate topic or whatever. Like we literally did it last night, and it's referencing the game again I was in last night. Like literally for like I want to say 20 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes, like people were just going off about other things without playing the game. It probably wasn't that long, but I'm exaggerating. But still, like, but it's so having a little bit more railroadiness to like direct and to keep things moving and rolling isn't terrible, especially yeah, if it's a three shot, it's not even a full campaign. Like this is you kind of gotta keep moving in order to get through everything you had planned, and you don't necessarily have to, of course. Like it is still, as always, primarily about the fun of everyone at the table, whatever that might be. But it is not just automatically bad to railroad. But this GM definitely made a ton of mistakes for sure. Like that same poster said. And I honestly I think OP probably also made some mistakes, at least based off of the lack of other context or information that we have, it seems like OP kind of just, bit the bullet or whatever. And like Sam said, this is a three shot. Like, if you really cared that much about this character in a three shot, like, I don't really know how much you were like, what else were you really
Well, the
expecting?
reality is like they said that they had already gone. This was the fourth round,
Yeah.
so they've played this character for three
Yeah,
other
this is
mini
the fourth
campaigns.
episode of this campaign. Yeah. So it's like, okay, you know, I get it. You've been, but I assume what these episodes are at most 6 hours a day. Like, don't get me wrong. Yeah, you can be attached to a character and everything, but like, you're not gonna get like maybe a super satisfying, journey, evolution, growth, and conclusion with only 4 episodes. So, or 3 to 4 sessions, that is, I should say. Um, But that's just me. To be fair, that's just my personal thought. Don't get me wrong. If I loved a character and I brought them along with as well, and I can absolutely still understand, like you brought a cleric, yeah, to like an undead themed thing, like campaign, even if it's only a couple of sessions. And if you were not able to utilize your vast assortment of anti-undead or specifically tailored spells for undead and specifically tailored abilities and spells for undead, yeah, that would suck. That would still suck a lot. And that's the thing. I don't ever stand for that though, personally. Like again, for me, I would have been like, yeah, no, this is what my class does. You can't just say that after the fact when I use this spell. Like if you didn't want me to take this at the start, that's one thing. Because at the very least, then I could maybe have come up with a different concept or character that I would have liked. I still would have thought it would be really stupid and dumb as fuck. Because I am never the type of person or GM to be like, I hate it when GMs are like, yeah, you can't play this race, this class, this whatever, unless it's like, we're playing a more strictly fantastical vanilla game of D&D. So it's like, oh yeah, you can't play a plasmoid or, like a warforged. And even then, I'm personally still of the mind. I'm like, you can come up with ways to justify plasmoids or the more of the astral races to be here. Plasmoids are just like they're just oozes. Think of it instead of making them like space oozes, they're terrestrial oozes. It's like certain oozes somehow achieve sentience through crazy magical means or something, and they have a race now. Like, but either way, I can understand it a little bit more there, and I can be a little bit more understanding of that and accepting of that, I should say. Excuse me. But for this, it's like if somebody just said after the fact, if somebody said that I couldn't use something because they didn't realize how effective and awesome it would be in this particular encounter situation, I'd kind of just say tough titties, fuck you. I don't know what to tell you, bro. This is what this does. This is what this class is really good at. And this is what this campaign is. That's why I brought it because I wanted to be able to feel like I was good at something. Like, sorry to say, sucks to suck, bro. I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, I'm doing it. Fuck you. No, you can't tell me I can't because, oh, you didn't expect it to be that effective. They still had to make rolls. It's not like I just immediately made it happen. They had to make rolls
Yeah,
to save. You rolled badly for them. They failed. That is my reward then. The dice decided, and I got rewarded with that. So fuck off. Uh Anything else you got on this one, buddy?
nope.
All right. I think with that so eloquently put, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. This one is titled Player Tried to Dox Me Over a Which Class is Weaker argument, and the GM took their side by Mob Talon. Just as a heads up, a little bit of a violence warning. Nothing too extreme from what I can recall, but he put the violence tag there for anybody. So this was about a year ago. I was playing in an online group with my girlfriend. Oh, that's sweet. We had found this group via Discord, and the GM seemed like a genuinely fun guy to hang around. We took video calls and such, and the vibes matched very well. We started the campaign, and from the get-go, it was quite the interesting experience. Our characters would get tested to the limit. We'd end sessions with, God damn, these enemies were OP. I can't believe you survived that type of feelings. You know what I'm saying? There are about five of us, but one player was kind of creepy, uncooperative, and overall hedonistic. They played a druid and would describe their character in great detail as a 6 foot tall Dom furry whenever they just turn into a beast. It was a wild experience, bro. I'm gonna tell you. This post is not about them, actually, but the player that replaced them. Interestingly enough. So after the druid player, excuse me, was kicked out, this new player, let's call them Daniel, came in. Daniel seemed okay. Actually, a great change of pace for the party. They would give good ideas, engage in a bit of tomfoolery in the very modest way? Question mark. Overall, seemingly a great, wonderful addition to the team. That is, until someone spoke of 1D&D and discussed classes. Now, this campaign was happening as the 2024 PHB UAs were being released, mind you. So, Daniel thought that rogues were unequivocally the most broken class in the game, and they should always be gutted in every game in order to balance them. I found that utterly foolish, and so did the other party, and so did the other party members, but only I was vocal about it. They would also say that paladins are absolutely destroyed and becoming the weakest class in D&D with the updates, which is why he put very clear emphasis here, 1D&D and everyone who supported it. Once again, only I was vocal to tell him otherwise. Paladins are getting their power redistributed. Their Nova is somewhat disappearing, to be fair, but they can still deal a lot of damage. However, their options, in turn, are getting expanded a lot. Daniel did not like this. A bit of back and forth ensues, with Daniel finally saying, "If you think paladins are so good, then roll a 1D&D paladin and fight my 2014 barbarian." I simply refused, because a class isn't stronger than another based simply on what they can do to each other, but rather on what they can do in a PvE setting compared to other classes. It's certainly not fun if you're up against a boss and the paladin drops max level smites in one turn to take 80% of the boss's HP while the team deals the rest. It doesn't really feel like the others earned the win. There might be some things you and I might disagree on, actually, OP, just in a second. We can talk about that a little bit later. Daniel called me a coward and a cheat. I escalated by calling him an idiot that genuinely believes rogues are broken. And after both sides continued to escalate, they finally started to threaten to dox me, threatening to send specific dead animals' heads and as well as, weirdly enough, dildos to my address. Now, as someone with knowledge on the matter, specifically doxing, the threat didn't scare me, but the intention behind it did. It's genuinely borderline impossible to get one's location via IP without an IP grabber. We had a player in the game that genuinely said these things. It took 2 hours of fighting back and forth and me belittling them and provoking them to finally show me my IP then, until Daniel finally admitted that he was full of crap. The most messed up part? When the GM caught wind of this, Daniel started gaslighting me and saying that not only did I start it, I also was the one that threatened him. Because I took screenshots, I showed the receipts to the GM in private. And they told me it's my fault for poking the landmine. Well, okay, sure. But the issue shouldn't be who poked the landmine, but rather, why the fuck is the easily triggered landmine there in the first place? I had to make an SA analogy for him to finally get it. Something along the lines of like, okay, look, it's your fault for getting assaulted. Why did you talk to the guy then? You see how stupid that sounds? See how ridiculous that is? So finally, after thanking me for showing how Daniel was a manipulative sack of shit, he said he'd put the campaign on a hiatus to recover from this. Now, come to find out a month later via another player, let's call her Layla, that the GM was making another campaign excluding me and my girlfriend to play with the others and Daniel. Layla didn't even tell me on purpose because she thought that I'd be joining too. She was just simply asking for advice on creating her character. And at this point, I just gave up. A few months later, when the GM wanted to resume our campaign, me and my girlfriend just told him no and quit. TLDR, GM has poor taste in players, kicking one out and bringing another that ended up threatening me with doxing and mailing me effed up things. Also, I'm aware there might be a few loophole or a few holes here and there, but I have some trouble organizing these things in the post. It's my first time posting here, so feel free to ask for context you think you might be missing, as I might have forgotten to mention key details that, at the time of posting, either aren't coming to me or don't feel as important. In post. Well, what do you think of this one, bud?
Um, this is why I don't play with strangers on the internet. That's one of them.
Oh, I
Uh,
mean, you know,
well, no, because if I know who you are in real life, I know where you live. It means if you say some heathen, like some shit like that to me, I can just come to your house.
true. Means that he could also have sent those dildos and animal heads though to
Yeah,
your
but I
house
know
too,
who
I guess.
does it. That's like
Yeah.
it's the anonymity allows people
No,
to
you're not wrong. I totally agree. It's true. They
go
it
further than they should
it
or would
emboldens
normally have
people.
because they're usually cowardice piece of
Exactly. It
human beings.
emboldens people because they believe they can get away scot-free, that there is no real risk.
Um, I mean, this is obviously the DM's fault for bringing in and then defending weirdos.
Well, I mean, at the start, even OP themselves said like it seemed like Daniel was super awesome at first, you know, was very like, helpful, supportive, engaging, like, all around a great addition until he just seemed to have, for whatever reason, a particularly intense and strong opinion about 1D&D and the
About
new.
literally nothing.
Yeah, about just a simple addition, upgrade, change, or shift, depending on how you want to look at it, Like, again, we can even talk about that. Like, we've had our own talks and stuff about that and analysis of it. We've got, I know, some other meta talks coming up, not too far away about like some of the more of the 2024 classes. Um, because again, it's true. Like the rogue is by no means, any way, shape, or form, the most broken, overpowered class in the game. There's
No,
there's
they're just annoying.
yeah, like, and they're really only annoying based off of skills. They're overwhelming, ridiculous expertise of skills. And it's only if, the GM and the players allow them to be too overwhelming or be so blanketly, what's the word that I can use here? So easily distributed to any scenario they want. Um, Whereas, like, same thing with, like, paladins. Yes, it is true. The paladin's supernova ability, their smite, has been nerfed a bit. It's true. It has. But to everyone's, to both Sam, to both OP, and to even my begrudging admittance, they still deal pretty damn good damage. And
It
they
doesn't,
get
yeah, it doesn't
they
change their effectiveness.
it does, and that they are more vulnerable now to counterplay, which isn't again inherently bad. It's not destroying their viability by any
It's
means.
almost like counterplay is kind of the bread and
Like
butter.
like the point is that there should be certain counterplay to things. There's nothing wrong with that, of course, and it's like yeah. So and again, to OP's credit too, they are correct in that paladins are also getting a number of other abilities that do give them a little bit more options, both in combat and out of combat now. It's not, they aren't kind of just one trick ponies as much as they used to be. And even then they still had okay diversity and options, but not nearly as much as everything else. Like, so it's not a bad thing. They're definitely not nerfed into the goddamn ground like this guy thinks. Like, because again, I also had the luck of playing with one 2024 Paladin and then one 2014 Paladin. And they both had certain things that made them better than the other in certain ways or whatever. They weren't necessarily truly superior to one another at all. It was like, just like any other class for the most part. Not every class, like certain classes are just absolutely garbage compared to everything else. But they definitely seemingly attempted to address that in the 2024 and 5.5. I'm just going to call it 5.5 because it's just quicker. They addressed that in 5.5. Tried to. There's a lot of classes. Like, again, I'm playing a sorcerer right now, you guys, and I'm actually like enjoying it so far. Like, to be
Because
fair,
they've always been good. I just don't see why you waited till now just to
Shut
get
your
it.
lying horn mouth. They have not. This is a new, brand new, completely new class by all accounts, and it's decent. Also, to be fair though, that might also be for the fact that I've also just been rolling uncharacteristically, mind you, like a god. It's kind of it's the epitome of irony, Sam, that I'm playing like the class that I originally hated the most in 2024, and yet I'm rolling fucking amazingly in almost every encounter that we do so far. Like it's kind of crazy. It's kind of stupid. I don't understand it, but it's literally like the fates are trying to, I don't know, teach me something, tell me something. I'm not entirely sure if I'm ready to hear it or acknowledge it, but either way, I'm enjoying the so-called quote unquote lesson, if there is one to be learned here. Either way, point being is that this was a whole ridiculous, stupid thing. Like, sure, OP definitely kept escalating and going with it, like didn't back down. Maybe not the best way to handle the situation by all accounts, to be fair. But at the same token, I also don't really judge or blame you for it either, because, you were just expressing your personal thoughts and opinion. You didn't seem to initially do it, in a belittling or, uh, like what's the word here? Diminishing way towards Daniel. So at least based on what you're depicting here, so I assume he kind of just started blowing up like an asshole, and you responded, which I'm not gonna blame or judge you for. Like I said, maybe not the best way to do it, but also sucks to suck, my dude. If you got some hot stupid takes, you got some hot stupid takes. Calls it as he sees it. What you want?
Well,
Um,
do we want to see another person that was let in this campaign before Daniel? The wonderful things they
Yes.
brought to the table?
Coincidentally, uh, apprentices, we actually have, in fact, this OP posted another story about the druid that they mentioned briefly in this story here, who was the player before Daniel came in, which is almost like a prequel, if you will, a precursor to the story we just read. So we're gonna go ahead and get into that one now, Sammy, by all means.
Yeah, this is also by Mob Talon. It's about the creepy, uncooperative, hedonistic druid player in my previous post. A few people were quite curious, but this is an essay warning. Um,
That's a
a few,
just
yeah, just I'll try to maybe partially censor. A few people who were quite curious about the druid from my previous post, and only a few got to see the case via a comment I made on that player. After rereading the comment, I believe it definitely warrants its own post. This druid player, let's call them David to keep it simple. David has implied that they were touching themselves during our calls several times. The first time we thought it was a joke, and in a gig of tomfoolery, we played along with the taunts. Apparently, it wasn't a joke, as they seriously would go quiet at times, and we'd hear suspicious noises. Some of those times, if we'd call for them enough, they'd reply, "Hold on," while, quote, panting. I think that's the word.
good Lord.
Somehow, we would move past this by genuinely taking a what we can't see can't bother us approach, but in hindsight, holy cow, that was fucked up. They were a trans woman, but looked extremely masculine, full grown beard and clothing, to the point that no one in the party knew if they were being edgy or serious. We tried to be respectful regardless, because it's not our business to decide what they are for them. David, it's a very mature take considering. David was playing a shifter druid with a
Of
displacer
course they
beast.
were.
Yep, with a displacer beast special transformation. They'd keep transforming in and out of a humanoid 6'10" tall furry dude with very uncomfortable attempts at being Dom. One such example being something along the lines of, "When you notice me, I'm no longer a small animal, but now you see a 6'10" insert very specific description of furry character, towering over you, looking down on you from up close, as I say, with a smile. To say that made me uncomfortable is an understatement. In that same session, we defeated a boss type enemy, which was his character's adoptive mom, a green hag. That green hag was being controlled by David's nemesis and told him, "I hoarded quite a few magical items. They will help you and your party to avenge me," with her last breath. David decided that all the magic items we're talking about, like 4 attunement slots and 6 more non-attunements, were theirs because it's their heirloom, despite the DM hinting at them that maybe it would be best to share. Even going as far as staging a flashback of the green hag telling David when they were young, "You should always share with your friends." And instead of focusing on the plot, they wanted to stay back and rebuild the hag's home. On the day of the next session, David would skip, only to 2 days later tell us that he was kidnapped by the Brazilian cartel, as in actively being kidnapped. Betrayed by his IRL friends who apparently wanted to make money off of selling his organs to the cartel while still texting into the Discord server. We didn't take it seriously at all. One of my lines
What?
was, and were the Mr. Cartel members nice enough to let you to keep your phone to text us on Discord? The next 2 weeks were comprised of David insisting on the kidnapping until somehow the police finally rescued them, responding with, "My friends did this because I'm trans." Not sure why it took that long for us to have had enough, but the DM, after discussing with us, decided to kick David out because they were just too much to handle. To this day, I I haven't heard from David, and honestly, I'm glad. Edit, I called him David because their character was a male, but I forgot to consider that the player is trans woman, so the name wouldn't fit properly. Hopefully, this context clears up any confusion. Edit 2, apparently hedonism isn't exactly what I thought it was. They were just creepy.
It's less hedonism, maybe more almost like a form of voyeurism, maybe, kind of. Either way, right off the bat, we can again. I just say, what the fuck? What the hell is this? Like, wow, OP 2 for 2. That's kind of crazy, right there. Honestly, like, yeah. When you were saying the GM has shitty taste in players, I mean, I don't know,
I
like,
mean, I do want to say that they're not technically wrong on hedonism because there is the noun definition and the
that's true.
philosophical definition.
That's true.
And the noun definition is the pursuit of pleasure, sensual self-indulgence. So this person
Yeah,
is a
no,
hedonist
that's
because they
fair.
only care about their own situation.
Yeah. I just like to know, like, where the hell did the whole getting kidnapped by cartel idea come into, like, where
Well, I mean, I have a theory.
please do.
It's obviously because there's it's self-indulgence. It's trying to make something out of nothing. They already
Obviously
had
attention. They like attention a
they like
lot. Yep.
attention. Well, yeah, they're a bearded masculine man claiming to be trans, which they may or may not be, but calling attention to it when it doesn't really
Yep.
matter. Um, to then call attention again when they were kidnapped because they're trans to sell their organs.
And also said that my friends did it because, like, they're not your that how they're not your friends then. They're like,
Well,
what?
also knowing that's not, first of all, they wouldn't kidnap you.
Yeah.
They would just kill you, or you'd wake up in a bathtub with a bunch of scars. There's no
Yeah.
kid. They don't need to kidnap you.
Yeah, like,
Like if you
and
actually
again, if
did
they're
your
gonna kidnap
research,
you, why would they let you have your phone to like what are we?
it's really
Yeah, it's like this is clearly just a not even a cry for help. It's just a boy who it's literally a boy who cried wolf scenario. Like literally. Like this person is very unwell, I think, and needs
yeah.
professional help like
Oh,
fucking
I don't think it's gonna help
immediately.
either.
I don't think it will either, but that doesn't mean they don't need it though. Like at least they could get them out of everyone else's, shit and keep them from fucking anything else up for anyone else. Like that's good holy God. Like either that or they're the absolute king of trolls. Like that's like it's one or the other. It's either they are exceedingly unwell all around or they're like the absolute king of trolls, just looking to watch the world burn and laugh. Like it's one or the other. Neither of which, personally, I'm particularly a fan of. I don't think I'm not a fan of either. I've never been a fan of trolls, and it's definitely not great when people are just very unwell in almost every way. It's like that's both of those things, in my opinion are rather kind of sad and unfortunate, and obviously straight up harmful to not least of which themselves, let alone everyone else around them. Like that's yeah. Either way, they definitely need some help. Uh, but definitely an interesting post, OP. I mean, yo, you had two crazies and like back to back. Like that's hell. I would be interested to see if you got a three for, quite frankly. Like, yo, let's go for the crown, man. Like, that's impressive. Yeah, literally, one of the top comment goes like, Jesus, between this and Daniel, what ancient tomb did you guys break into to get cursed with such batshit players? Good on you for ditching after the Daniel saga, but hate to imagine what would happen and what level 3 would have been. Like, literally. What would, like, this isn't even their final form. What would have been, like, what would have been the hat trick at that point? Come on now. I am morbidly curious to know. Because, good Lord, where can you go from here? Like, you go from cartel kidnappings to trying to dox out of a which character class is weaker. I don't know how you can top that. I really don't. I don't know how does anyone follow that at that point. I think the third one's probably just going to be like the equivalent of a super disappointing, third movie installment of a series where you're just like, yeah, they all just got progressively worse as time went on. Or you know what? Maybe it'll pull a MCU Spider-Man. Maybe it'll pull a Spider-Man No Way Home style and like surprise everybody and be like the absolute most amazing player that you ever had before. Like of the three, it was like, wow, this is actually an amazing time. I don't know. What do you think, bud?
Oh, I mean, it's obvious, very, very obvious that like they just don't know how to pick them. They're really unlucky. Like at some point, I would have to start looking at the DM and being like, "All right, where the fuck are you finding these people?" Because that's that is the odds of going from David to Daniel are difficult enough. So I'm like, where are you pulling these people out of? That's what I would like to
I mean,
know.
I guess Discord, I guess
Well,
that's
I guess that's not very surprising.
yeah. Now Gopi says his girlfriend, found this group via Discord. Uh, and again, at the very least, Daniel initially seemed pretty cool, but then showed his truly unstable state very soon afterwards. And after that, man, the dominoes just kept tumbling. They kept falling. Oh boy, that's that is a treat. All right. Let's go ahead. We can move on to the last story of the day at this point, I'd say. This one, Acolytes, is titled "The Day I Killed Another D&D Player Character and I Don't Regret It" by Ad Capital 4967. The party, a semi-experienced group of 4 players. Myself, a half-drow shadow sorcerer named Mortimer, a warlock Goliath called Thrawn, a ball-spawn Azamar rogue called Holly, and a human bard named Abel. The build-up. So this was our second campaign. We had switched GMs, so this was our first time playing alongside Abel's player as he was the prior GM. This campaign was Curse of Strahd, and it was immediately set up to be a dangerous and unforgiving land where everything was set against us. We were thrown into Death House in session, like 2, I want to say. Jesus. We had dealt with rude NPCs and had been faced with threats at every turn. Another thing worth mentioning is Abel's player didn't actually start as Abel. He started as a robot called Tallboy. But upon us being called upon to have a meal with Strahd von Zarovich himself, Tallboy was unceremoniously killed. My character also inadvertently had his neck snapped by Strahd, and the way Tallboy died was Strahd used Holly's kill word. Think like a Winter Soldier type of situation, and forced Thrawn to choose which Strahd would revive, myself or Tallboy. I was chosen, which was a mutual agreement at the table, and so therefore, enter Abel, as I'm sure you can imagine. Now, having lost a member and almost nearly lost another member, the team was quite tense. My character also ended up dying to a trap after all of this, but luckily, thanks to being a shadow sorcerer, I was able to return to life. We came across Abel in a tavern, and after some talking, he joined the crew. Sort of jumping over details here a bit, but Abel was difficult. This character seemed to enjoy making conflict, and in 2 separate combat encounters, hid and even somehow healed an enemy by quote unquote accident. He seemed wholly incompetent and utterly useless in combat, and he did not make up for it by being endearing or interesting outside of fights. Now, here's the reveal. After much ambiguous things being said out of sessions about Abel and his power and true intents, eventually at the end of the session, at the end of one particular session, Abel pulls Holly aside in character and reveals that so far he has been lying in almost every single way. He isn't incompetent. He's actually extremely intelligent and is, a matter of fact, the son of a devil that he has a strong desire to impress. And he was originally even hired by Strahd himself to spy on us and put us in danger. But he has come to like Mortimer and Thrawn like pets, he says. And every bit of drama he caused was all intentional. He asks Holly to keep this between them for now, as he feels that, the rest of the party wouldn't understand and react well. But he is sure that, well, she understands, as she is also a ball spawn. Just a little quick aside, Holly hates her father. Holly then immediately tells us, and we all talk and realize that we need to confront Abel next session and devise a plan. So, we to give him a singular chance to explain himself further and to give him one final day to prove himself useful to us. And if he fails, we would immediately abandon him, or even worse, if he put us in danger once more, we would be forced to fight him. Finally, the confrontation. The next session arrives. Abel's player is aware of what he told Holly, and that Holly has told our characters. Or I think there was a little bit of typo. I think it means to say Abel's player is aware that we are aware of what he told Holly, and that Holly told our characters. Yeah, that's it. We let the GM know in private our plan and that we'd like to avoid it going bad, but there's a chance we might have to fight it. The GM understands, and we go to the session. Mortimer leads the conversation. He asks Abel to confirm if everything he heard was true. He says it is. Mortimer tells Abel that he has one day to prove himself useful to us and to be trustworthy, and that this isn't a joke. This is a dangerous land, and we do not want to bring more risks along with us. To this, Abel decides to reply, "Wow, I'm surprised it was the twink who had the balls to say all this to me." Now, at this point, Mortimer, who has already who was or is already unstable in many ways due to dying twice in his journey, and was so thoroughly done with Barovia and wanting to ensure his own safety as well as that of Holly's and Thrawn's, decides to just say, "Fuck it, we ball," and attacks Abel. Holly and Thrawn immediately join, and Abel is successfully deleted. And that's that. There's a lot of stuff that happened outside of the table after this, like the reveal that Abel had made contingency plans to delete Mortimer's disabled mother, to force Hallie to execute the brother she wishes to rescue, and to make a deal with Thrawn's patron, a genie that lives inside of him, to help him destroy the others. There's a lot of details I skipped over, but that's the general gist of it. I hope it was a good read. End post. Boy, these players, man, holy shit, dude. We hit the theme right on the money this time around, buddy. What do you make of this whole scenario, buddy?
Well, I completely agree with killing the other player. Because this is a player and DM like working together to fuck over other people at the table. Um, and I don't like the whole spy character idea as like I'm gonna have a character at the table that's gonna basically be a spy for everyone else, and the DM knows and is okay with it. It's one thing if it's like they're working for another group that has maybe a difference of opinion, but this is like you're working for the evil guy
The
to
the
fuck over the
main the
party.
main evil bad guy. Like that's
Like that's a little bit
that's
different. If you had like
that's a
a
toughie. That's a
yeah, like there's one thing if you have like a character who's part of a thieves guild or some sort of underground that works with the party to figure something out. Like that's fine. It's just different. It's not exactly
No, it's yeah, this whole thing is kind of like boy, oh 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 boy. Like having an individual, like you just stated, like the whole concept, like I remember one of the first players or one of the first characters that I made, like I did want to make him kind of like a spy-esque kind of thing, but it was specifically in regards to like I was going to be a spy. Like the campaign was essentially that we were a contingent of like an army of a nation that was putting together things, and that we were all kind of new, we were all kind of different, and I wanted to basically be like a spy for a neighboring country to like figure out, what this country was doing amassing such a large military presence or force. If they were looking to potentially, try and conquer things, like what was the thing? Like that was the idea that I had for my character. Um, but obviously, then to have develop over a period of time specific loyalty and affection and connection with the other players' characters, that we're going through thick and thin. We're taking on life-threatening missions and endangering missions, like I think in that regard, it's perfectly doable because you still technically have loyalty to the people fighting next to you, right? I mean, hell, that's military rules 101, where you have the utmost faith, loyalty, dedication, and commitment to the men and women fighting next to you in combat. Doesn't matter what's going on when you're out there in the field, like these are the people that you have to count on and respect and look out for as they do for you. But this, where anytime you have a person, and I literally I saw this so-called quote unquote twist from a fucking mile away because it's also so incredibly goddamn cliche and uninspired and unoriginal. Like it's stupid even. Where it's like, oh yeah, Abel immediately joins the group, but then immediately proves to be completely and utterly incompetent. Not even just incompetent, but even detrimental to the party. Oh, how do you accidentally heal an enemy? That's ridiculous. Like, there's almost no way, shape, or form that can ever actually happen. Oh, he just goes and hides instead of actually actively contributing to the conflict or the encounter? No shit. How has he survived in Barovia this long? Like that. Like right away, you know that he is trolling. And the biggest thing too being is like, okay, it was a mutual decision at the table for your character to be revived. I'm always never a huge fan of the idea of like just using your big bad evil guy to just instantly take out a player character and having no contingency to revive all. Like, here's the thing. If you want a big bad evil guy to like, just eradicate the player characters to be able to convey to them the true extent of like his superiority and power at their current level, that's fine because I get it. Definitely it hits home. It does. It can be a huge statement. But you then in turn have to have some kind of contingency to allow them to then revive. You know what I mean? So that
Yeah.
it's not permanent. It's not a permanent thing. So that you can be like, yeah, here you guys need to be aware of the actual threat and danger this guy possesses and poses. But I'm not going to punish you for that, like to show that, unless of course you made really stupid decisions yourself. That's different. We're talking about this is something the GM enforces themselves in order to create a more, again, narrative dynamic and feeling, right? To evoke specific reactions. If you want to do that, I don't have a problem with that, but you need to make sure that it doesn't technically, truly, or even for very long, negatively impact your players like that. It's
Yeah.
about being able to evoke emotional and mental, reactions and responses and understandings. Um, and so like with that, it's like, I guess the guy didn't care that his robot died, which is like, okay. And then immediately comes back with this. And so I mean, like, if a GM is willing to do that, probably not the best GM right away. Probably not great. So it would stand to reason that he's also willing to do or allow really dumb, stupid, effed up shit like this. Like, highly unfortunate. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's highly
Yeah,
unfortunate.
it's not good.
I really don't like, yeah, And it's like literally one of the top voted comments, like, frankly, I'd be beating your GM inside out, metaphorically, for allowing Abel's character to be built with such a PvP flavored backstory. OP responds, like, would it surprise you if I told you that they were a couple? To be honest, I don't really blame the DM, as I do suspect he put a lot of pressure on her to do these things. Yeah, yeah, I would not be surprised at all if the GM, ironically, or rather maybe not even ironically, but very fittingly, was the puppet master behind all of this to start screwing the party over. Like that's
Well,
just
yeah,
never,
you kind of need one.
yeah, that's just never, that's never awesome.
No.
Uh, OP goes on to say, though, I don't really blame the GM, to be fair. A lot of other shit happened across other campaigns there that gives me the sense that she had to do certain things to appease him when it came to D&D. Hmm.
I mean, you can still.
Yeah, I never like those kinds of situations. Like that's obviously that is one of the risks of playing D&D with like, your friends or partners where you hell, even at the best of times, even if it is like more of a healthy and like, loving relationship, I know there are moments where one or both partners can potentially feel like they either one, like they feel like they need to give like specific attention or like, focus on their partner to not make them feel like they're, ignoring them or neglect or whatever, to make sure they don't feel any negative things based off of the role play and acting that's happening. Or they go the completely other direction where they're like they deliberately are like doing their best to like not show any favoritism, and which might even maybe lead to kind of being a bit neglectful or dismissive or maybe even, shitty at times to their partner because they're like deliberately trying to not do the favoritism thing due to personal, connection and affection. Uh and again, let's not even like that. And again, that's when, the relationship might actually even be truly positive and healthy and nice. Let's not even talk about if a relationship is already toxic and fucked up and abusive as hell. Where, yeah, I think shit like this might even happen. And I'm not saying that this is actually like abusive or toxic per se, but if what OP is saying has any bearing, it is definitely unfortunate if the player is literally strong arming the GM to basically run like a personal fantasy simulation for him. Those are never awesome.
No, not great.
Those are never super dope and awesome. Like, again, it doesn't matter if the GM is your partner, your friend, a previous stranger or whatever. It is always great for both the GM and the player to work together to be able to craft and create the experience and the story and the narrative that the player wants for their character, right? No matter who it is, like you should always work with your GM to try and make your character to, and to tell the story you want to tell with your character. That's always great. That doesn't mean that you have to create like a literal, fantasy simulation for yourself because it also means you have to include the other players. You have to be considerate. You have to compromise. You have to be able to shift and adjust some things of your character to fit into the world more cohesively. Like it is what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
agreed. It is highly unfortunate. Anything else you got to say about this one, buddy?
No.
Well, with that, I do believe that that's then all we've got for you today, acolytes. If you guys stuck with us this long, we sincerely, seriously appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. We hope you enjoyed today's lesson. Again, if you did, please be sure to leave a nice review by liking and commenting down below. Subscribe and share the channel. Hit that notification bell to make sure you never miss out on all the new videos that we release every week. Um, and as always, we hope that you guys are having, great days and times at your own tables and lives. Uh, And as always, we hope that we'll see you again when we take another deep dive back down into the archive. Thanks, y'all. Have a great
Yeah.
one.